and I'll give you the official welcoming, because we, as we can see, we're of many ages, and I'm sure we have various ethnic backgrounds in our heritage and our cultural heritage. We come from different religious backgrounds and socioeconomic groups and different abilities and sexual orientation and gender orientation. And so it's nice to just take this time to welcome each other. We study and we practice for the benefit of all beings and for this living earth, recognizing the suffering that's caused by biases and prejudices and oppression that's based on race and sex and class. And we aspire to do no harm, to dismantle barriers that cause separation and suffering, and that begins with us. It begins with us seeing how we cause our own suffering, which is what we were talking about right when you came in. And we're really recognizing that our liberation is interconnected with the liberation of all. And so as we begin to settle ourselves from our busy day and begin to train and be with the mind, it's also good to honor those indigenous peoples whose lands we occupy, honoring and recognizing that here in Portland, it's the Clackamas, the Multnomah, the Cowlitz, the Tualatin, the Kalapuya, the 7 tribes of the Grand Ronde, as well as the many bands of the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz and other native communities that have made their homes all across our country here in the Columbia River area 11,000 years. And so just respectfully acknowledging the indigenous communities of the past and of the present and of the future and their presence. Really acknowledging how each of us benefits by living on this land, the traditional territories of indigenous peoples. And acknowledging the Buddhist immigrants that came to America, which have also afforded us the luxury of exposing ourselves to different kinds of Buddhism without going to other countries if we don't want to. Here in Portland, there's probably every different temple from each of the Buddhist countries: Sri Lankan, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Thai, Cambodian, Vietnamese. And then this Theravadan practice of some of the early practices of Buddhism. It's originated from Burma and Sri Lanka, but they didn't start recording any of the teachings of the Buddha for about 100 years after his death. So all of that is to say that we have ancestors and support, and we acknowledge the teachings of the Buddha to allow us to find freedom, to realize that we can become realized in this lifetime. And we have the Dharma, the teachings that we are touching on in ourselves. And we have the Sangha, each other in this Sangha, as well as all of those that have gone before us, lay people, monks, nuns, that have lived and practiced the Buddhist teachings and passed them from generation to generation. So it is with great honor and acknowledgement of this stability that we have, really, that we can practice these teachings that are 2,600 years old. And the major one that we can really notice in our lives day in and day out is mindfulness. So I'm going to ring this bell. And just let us take a couple of long and deep breaths that can bring in rejuvenating energy and just let out some of the stagnant energy we might find in the body as we begin settling into place and breathing. And we can use our breath as a starting point, as a stable anchor, noticing at the nostrils, or maybe noticing it at the belly as our anchor. We can also use where our body is sitting as an anchor, noticing the buttocks on the chair or the feet on the floor, or where the hands touch, where the legs touch, anything where you noticed a touch point. We can have a sensation that we can be present with of heat or coolness, pressure, lightness. We just investigate a little to be present in this moment, noticing sensations and using the body as that place of anchoring is the most common place we have to recognize because we are living in it all day long. If you're at the nostrils, you might notice coolness coming in and warmth flowing out. Or maybe we feel more present at the breath at the belly or the diaphragm, as we notice the arising of the diaphragm and the pressure that occurs, and the falling of the diaphragm and the lack of pressure. So whether we use the nostrils or the belly or a touch point of the body, we have this as the anchor to return to when we find ourselves lost in thought. Whether it's noticing sensations happening in the body that are pleasant or unpleasant, or we wish weren't happening, or we want something different to be happening. Or whether it's in the mind, same thing. We might notice ourselves attaching to something that is a pleasant sensation or pushing away an unpleasant sensation. But this is mindfulness at work. This is mindfulness and awareness, being observant, just observing, noticing where the mind might get caught, and also noticing when we really look carefully and deeply that whatever we choose to be present with only lasts for a certain amount of time. And so we can see that if we watch carefully, it lasts for a certain amount of time and then it dissipates on its own without our controlling it. And so we stay present over and over again to what's arising, lasting for a certain amount of time and falling away. And as we keep reminding ourselves to begin again, we can hold ourselves with kindness. We can hold ourselves with gentleness. We can be at ease with whatever's going on. We can wish that upon ourselves. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be at ease. And so we have that as a container, a foundation, while we give our heart and mind something to do by paying attention over and over again to what's arising in the present moment. Whatever is arising in the present moment comes to us from our senses, our ears, our eyes, our nose, our mouth, sensation arriving to each of these places, and our thought door. And mindfulness can branch away from the anchor of the breath or the touch point and also notice what's happening at whichever one of those sense doors is most prevalent. So we have options, but we want to just stick with noticing one thing at a time for as long as we can, watching it rise and pass away, and realize that any grasping that we have toward it or pushing away that we have of it has a chance to be seen and known. Sounds may occur close up, far away. Sound arriving to the ear. Tasting could be present. With our eyes closed, seeing not so present, although there's internal seeing, which can also be thought of as thinking. But sometimes it's just visual. And we have touching, those places that we notice, warmth and heat and pressure. And we have thinking that occurs. But we can begin to realize that the thinking is always present. It just comes and goes and flows. Sometimes there's maybe a little less thinking than others, but it's a process that happens in the mind. And we just don't have to believe everything we think. We can just remind ourselves that it's just thinking that's happening. We don't run away from our thoughts, but we don't put a lot of energy into them. They last for a certain amount of time and they pass away. Thinking, just like seeing and hearing and tasting and touching and smelling, is impermanent, arises and passes away over and over again. And in this stream of mindfulness and awareness, we are open to just allowing what's arising to be seen clearly, to be felt and known its impermanent nature. And even perhaps we see the end of it before the next wave of intention flows in. Every now and then we might find our attention waning, waning, and we can just ask ourselves what's happening in the mind, what's happening in the heart and mind right now. Without having judgment about it or analyzing it, we're just with it. We may notice that what's happening is pleasant, or we might find that it's unpleasant. Maybe it's neither one, it's just neutral. We can't really tell. But we're present for whatever's arising, and each of these present moments brings a moment of freedom without views and opinions that we're attached to. It's a moment of pure freedom, free from suffering, free from attachment, waking up each moment that we can. Breath by breath, moment by moment, we return to the present moment, noticing if we've been lost in thought about the future or ruminating about the past. And we just come back to that breath at the nostrils, or the breath at the belly, or the touch point, to have energy and interest in what's happening. Sometimes as we remind ourselves what's happening right now, we can have a small internal smile, just a feeling of upliftment, lifting ourselves up. The joy of being in this present moment, of being born human in this lifetime, so that we can see clearly what happens in the mind, what is impermanent, and that if we grasp at it, we find no real sense of self. And if we try to hang on to it, we create suffering, and we can see this clearly, moment after moment. That smile, that little smile that you see sometimes on the Buddha and on Kuan Yin's face. Seeing clearly. As we hold ourselves in kindness. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be free. May I be filled with ease and well-being. May I be happy. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be free. May I have ease and well-being. May I be happy. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be free. May I be filled with ease and well-being. May I be happy. You can make up your own lines. And letting that sense of happiness and well-being be nurtured in ourselves. May we take care of ourselves happily. May we let this sense of well-being spread to others. May you be free. May you have ease and well-being. A close friend, a benefactor, holding them in our hearts. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be free. May you have ease and well-being. May you be happy. Envisioning a close friend, a benefactor, holding them in your hearts, knowing that they have suffering moments. May they hold themselves in compassion, the way that we hold you in compassion. May you hold yourself in compassion when things are difficult. And as we let these thoughts of kindness and well-being spread to another, including other beings, a neutral being, someone or an animal or a child, a neutral being that we don't know, that we know goes through suffering just like we do. May you have ease and well-being. May you be free from suffering. May you take care of yourself happily. And as we include these other beings, some of them might be difficult, but just as I wish to be happy, I know that you also wish to be happy. Seeing another person, one known or unknown, knowing that these beings, neutral ones, difficult ones, all beings, have a desire to be happy. May all beings, seen and unseen, known and unknown, be free from harm, safe and protected. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. As we develop this concentration practice of the repetition of phrases or the sense, feeling in the body, in the heart, this spaciousness that can be developed for all beings. And in return, we are receiving that by giving it. Being at ease, having compassion. Finding equanimity when things fall into extreme. Noticing our own joy and joyous moments of another. May all beings be at ease. Those that swim and fly, the creepy crawlies and the ones we don't see, those beings way down under the ocean, and those beings that are flying above us. May all beings everywhere have ease. May they be free from harm, safe and protected. Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya domino upakitava meruchanti te samvapasamo sukho. All conditioned things are subject to impermanence. Seeing this clearly with mindfulness brings the greatest happiness. As we hold ourselves in kindness, as we remind ourselves to be free from harm, safe and protected. And have that mindset to be not causing harm subtly to ourselves and to others. May all beings be at ease. And may we really know that the goodness of this practice is of benefit to all beings, no matter what we're going through, no matter what the practice is like. Taking time to train the mind, be with the heart and mind, be with each other. It might be a small step, but it's a step toward peace. It's a step toward happiness and toward understanding the non-personal nature of what arises and passes away by seeing its impermanence. Thank you so much for your practice. And as you gently open your eyes and with mindfulness reach toward your glass of water or whatever is nearby, letting that kindness that gets developed be shared with each other in our circle here, in our circle of squares. And I think before we have a little more conversation about how the practice is or questions you might have about your practice, that I wanted to talk just a little bit about the fall equinox. Just that remembrance that it's that equilibrium of day and night, and it represents the light and the darkness in our lives. And these long summer nights that have passed, and now we're in a season of transition. And on the autumn equinox, day and night are of equal length, and that was just a few days ago. And these signals that the need to balance light and dark within us. Oftentimes we sort of fear the dark and really adore the light. There's a story from a Zen master, Tokusan. He was still a student and he visited his teacher, Ryutan, and it was just before sundown. And they sat on the floor of Ryutan's hut, casually drinking tea and discussing Zen until deep into the night. And at last, Ryutan said, "Maybe it's about time you went home." And so Tokusan bowed to his teacher and walked to the door and said, "It's completely dark outside." Ryutan lit a lantern and said, "Why not take this?" Just as Tokusan was about to take the lamp from his teacher's hands, Ryutan blew out the flame. Tokusan suddenly knew everything there was to know. He reached enlightenment in that moment of impermanence of the darkness. Sometimes we think that there's no remedy for our situation than to begin from a point of absolute darkness. That can happen by turning off the television and, extinguishing the lantern. It has some similarities, as well as when we put down our device, when we put away our phone or don't go to social media for a while, that it's an abrupt transition that we're making, and it can leave us in a different world. And in darkness, we're always on our own. But a lot can be seen in that darkness. There's a Higan is a Buddhist holiday that's exclusively celebrated in Japanese sects for 7 days, 3 days before and 3 days after the spring equinox and the autumn equinox. And it's observed in nearly every Buddhist school in Japan. It's fascinating to kind of know that there are different cultures in Theravadan Buddhist holidays and festivals in Southeast Asia. September and October, there's a festival of lights. And it's in Myanmar, and it marks the end of what would be sort of like Buddhist Lent. It lasts for 3 days, and it's held around the time of the full moon, which was just 2 days ago in October. And that's a celebration, interestingly enough, of the day that it is said that the Buddha's spirit returned to earth. And it marks the lighting of oil lanterns and candles and electric lights at night. And there's all kinds of meritorious deeds that are performed at pagodas. You can go online and see all of these fire balloons that are set up into the sky, and there's dancing and partying, and these 3-day light festival is held on the day right before the full moon, and the full moon and the day after the full moon. So it's kind of heartwarming to think that these celebrations are happening, halfway around the world right now at the full moon time and this transition time into the fall. It's a equilibrium of day and night, and it kind of represents the light and the darkness in our lives. And just balancing the season, these hours of daylight and hours of darkness. It's the end of a lot of things that can be also thought of as a beginning, taking a kind of cue from this seasonal, helping us to find balance and the balance that we need. This passing from light to dark as the understanding of the fall and looking within. There's a Catholic writer and a poet who wrote Living Spiritual Teachers, and this is something that's just little pieces of light, it's called. And just this one quote out of it is, "I gratefully acknowledge how darkness has become less of an enemy for me and more of a place of silent nurturance, where the slow, steady gestation needed for my soul's growth can occur. Not only is light a welcomed part of my life," she says, "but I'm also developing a greater understanding of how much I need to befriend my inner darkness." And this was just what was coming up when we were gathering in the beginning. How do we embrace our inner darkness? Here's a poem by Emily Bronte. Fall, leaves, fall, die, flowers, away. Lengthening night and shortening day, every leaf speaks bliss to me. Fluttering from the autumn tree, I shall smile when the wreaths of snow blossom where the rose should grow. I shall sing when night's decay ushers in a drearier day. It might not be what we really think about, but maybe we should sing when we start feeling ourselves falling into this kind of darkness and being dreary by it. Sing about the night's decay. That's interesting what Emily Bronte has to say. And here's a poem on autumn by John Clare. I love the fitful gusts that shakes the casement all the day, and from the mossy elm tree takes the faded leaf away. twirling it by the window pane with 1,000 others down the lane. I love to see the shaking twig dance till the shut of eve, the sparrow on the cottage rig whose chirp would make believe that spring was just now flirting by in summer's lap with flowers to lie. I love to see the cottage smoke curl upwards through the naked trees, the pigeons nestled round the cote on dull November days like these. The cock upon the dunghill crows, the mill sails on the heath a-going. The feather from the raven's breast falls on the stubble lay. The acorns near the old crow's nests fall pattering down the tree. The grunting pigs that wait for all scramble and hurry where they fall. That's an interesting farm scene with pigs and crows and dung and acorns. So really, this celestial event that graces us, at least in the northern hemisphere of fall, it offers us a glimpse into harmonious balance of the cosmos. And in this extraordinary time of light and darkness, engaging in this beautiful dance of equality as the sun elegantly crosses the celestial equator, in the enchanting embrace of autumn, where the sun's gentle warmth surrenders to the crisp, cool air. It's gotten really crispy lately. And our natural world embarks on a wondrous symphony of transition and transformation. And may we really remember and connect ourselves with nature, because nature is who we are. We are nature. These aggregates that come together and fall apart. And it's a sacred time that we listen closely to the ancient whispers of the earth. And we can find ourselves at these profound junctures, a moment to bow in reverence and to ponder the cyclical mysteries of life, and to forge a deep connection with the bountiful gifts that are bestowed upon us by the land that we nurture or harvest. I've been harvesting my plums lately. They've gone from easy to harvest and still slightly hard to now very soft and plopping on the ground, and the free fall and picking them way high up, and they're definitely past their absolute prime of picking, but I'm still gathering them. These are powerful times, a time of reflection and allowing old ways to fall off and begin the deep sowing of new seeds of possibilities to transform during the internal season coming up of winter. And so I think strengthening our thoughts and our capacity to express ourselves, we step inside this vortex and we listen to the heartbeat, really, of the world's drum. And it's a time to reconnect deeply to harmonious music, the graceful dance, the endless circles that we're connected to in our life, that we aren't alone, that it's cycling again. And so I couldn't resist this poem about plums by Gillian Clark. You can imagine yourself in my backyard where my plums are really starting to fall on the roof of the patio. It's by Gillian Clark. When their time comes, they fall. Without wind, without rain, they seep through the trees muslin in a slow fermentation. Daily the low sun warms them in a late love that is sweeter than summer. In a bed at night we hear heartbeat of fruitfall The secretive slugs crawl home to the burst honeys, are found in the morning, mouth on mouth, inseparable. We spread patchwork counterpanes for a clean catch. Baskets fill, never before such harvest. Such a hunter's moon burning. This full moon is the hunter's moon. The hawthorns drunk on syrups that are rich by day, then spiders pitch tents in the wet grass. This morning, the red sun is opening like a rose. On our white wall, prints there the fishbone shadow of a fern. The early blackbirds fly, guilty from a dawn hall of fallen fruit. We too breakfast on sweetness. Soon plum trees will be bone, grown delicate with frost's formalities. Their black angles will tear the snow. Luckily, we don't have so much snow here to be torn, but you do there in Massachusetts, that's for sure. So just taking a few moments to reflect on the internal possibilities of transition, of change, of what we can embrace in ourselves and see, perhaps encouraged to transition as we realize this equal day and night is moving toward darkness, and we have this dance of equality as the sun crosses the equator. And what kind of vortex within ourselves do we reconnect with deeply to find our own graceful dance of balancing light and dark and holding ourselves kindly through all of it. So that's kind of what's been on my mind over the last week or so, having been at Cloud Mountain for a 5-day retreat in which it went from 2 days of sun to 3 more days of rain and cold coming in. So I really felt the sense of seasonal change, and then coming back home to Portland and seeing the beginning of leaves turning, and how by acknowledging nature and being in nature, it really can help us, at least it does for me, really see that some of my petty thought forms are just that. They're not very useful. And if I just see directly what's happening right in front of me, the season change, feel the coolness on my air, on my face, feel the water on my hair, feel myself grumbling because I'm getting wet, and then laughing because really I just want all beings to be happy, changing the attitude of the mind toward letting go of what's not helpful and having a real felt sense of non-harm for myself, non-harm for others. So let me hear from you what's on your mind and how these seasonal effects, what's happening in the mind, what's happening in the heart, what's up for you.